Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast, number 100. I can't believe I made 100 of these so far, and I'm really looking forward to keeping going with this. Obviously, I have all of you to thank, especially my Patreon subscribers that make this happen, and then, honestly, everybody that just watches this. If you guys didn't watch it, I wouldn't really have the opportunity to make these, so thank you so much. I really wanted to do something special for the 100th, but it couldn't have come at a worse time. Not a bad time, things are happy, it's just I'm about to move, I got a million projects going on, there was so much going on this week I couldn't really carve time out to go do something kind of nuts. So maybe when I'm moved into the new place I could, re-celebrate then or something, but it's a little nuts. Right next to me I have boxes piled floor to ceiling getting ready to move. So I guess for the 100th episode I'll just open it up with a gigantic thank you. I got my Chad Shank Diplomat t-shirt on, so figured something special that you can't even really see on camera anyway, but oh well. So thanks to everybody, and let's just jump right into it. I gotta start out just by saying another thank you to Steve from HD Retrovision, because that video we made about how to use a scope for retro gaming stuff is one of the most important videos I've made. I really feel that way. I'm not just trying to hype my own video or something, but he took the time, in case you haven't seen the video, he took the time to go through and show the very basic steps of what to do to use an oscilloscope to test retro gaming voltages, which can be applied to consoles, SCART cables, or even arcade machines and stuff like that. And the tools that he has trained us with now, even if you don't understand what you're looking at, you're still able to take a bunch of scope captures and then take those JPEGs and post them on a forum. And then, even if you only have a basic electronics knowledge, at least now you have the ability and the tools to discuss what you're looking at, and other people might be able to jump in and help. So this is something I've been wanting to do for a while. I watched it twice myself, just obviously once while we were filming it, but then during editing, and then again afterwards, both because I was obviously trying to edit it well, but also because I really wanted to learn as much as I could about it, and I have my scope set up right in front of me right here. And as soon as I get my new setup done, it's going to be running into my RGB monitor at all times. So anytime I need to, I could throw any video source right in front of me, see it on the monitor, and see it on the scope. So I think that's going to make everything a lot easier to test, and I really hope anybody that's even been on the fence a little bit about buying a scope, watch this video, and maybe this will push you to get one, because if you ever need to do any kind of custom work, this is almost a necessity. Especially if you ever want to dip into things like RGB modding a TV, super guns. It's not required, but it's going to make everything so much better. So thank you again to Steve for making the video with me. I don't even think he realized he was making one. I could swear I told him, but he kind of walked in like wondering why the camera was all set up and everything. But thanks again for taking the time to do it, and I really hope anybody that's even mildly interested check it out. And if nothing else, watch the first 5 minutes, because we give you a quick rundown and unboxing, show the basics of what to do, and then we go back and explain all the details. So don't let the length of the video scare you away. Even if you're interested, just check out the first 5 minutes. But thanks again, and I really hope this pushes a lot more people to buy a scope. There's been some more research into Atari Jaguar RGB SCART cables. It looks like they have the same issue on the sync line that both the Sega Saturn and even really the Sega Genesis had, where you need components on there. You could design a circuit around it, you could try and use a different line with a sync stripper, but really for our purposes and for both safety and quality, all you really need is a 680 ohm resistor followed by a 220 microfarad series capacitor. Now you could actually use 100 to 220. I always usually stick with 220 microfarad, written as 220 UF, simply because in the retro gaming world, anybody that tinkers probably already has a big bag of those anyway, and it's not going to make a difference. So putting those two components on will be a fix. Firebrand X was the one that kind of set out on this mission to solve this, and I'm glad he did, because he then recruited Steve from HD Retrovision, once again, we're dragging Steve into this, to check it out and scope everything and really find out what exactly would be needed to get it to the right signal level. And that was how he determined it. And the good news is, if you already own these cables, it's super, super easy to check your cables and to add these components. I did the whole video on that last year, and honestly, it's got to be one of the easiest things that you could do in the retro gaming world, especially considering you know, how small some of these pins get and how in-depth some of these mods go. Just adding 2 components like I showed in there was definitely something that anybody with just basic soldering skills could handle. So once again, you know, thanks very much to Firebrand X for hunting this down, and to Steve from HD Retrovision. And on a personal note here, it does seem like I kiss a lot of people's asses quite a bit when I talk about these things in the roundups, but the truth is that a lot of these times, some of the quick updates actually take hours and hours and hours of behind-the-scenes work. So people like those 2 guys often donate those hours, and really just for the love of community and the nerdy, you know, striving for perfection. So a huge thank you once again to both Steve and Firebrand X, and to everybody else that helps out behind the scenes, because sometimes it's very easy to make a 2-minute video about something and seem like it's all buttoned up, all nice and nifty, but the truth is, it's just really complicated, and sometimes I'm able to make it, to simplify it, to make it easier to listen to. So thanks a lot to them. Greg Collins is at it again, this time with a 3D print that repairs the Neo Geo CD laser assembly. He's going to do some final tweaking and then post his files for free up on Thingiverse with the rest of his 3D printed designs. So once again, awesome work, and little stuff like this is just a massive help to everybody. And maybe someday we could go in and try to figure out, even if we have to have them mass produced, but total Sega CD1 rebuild kits I think would be amazing. Even if it's something that's too fine for a 3D print, I think any Sega CD1 owner would totally throw down $50 if they can get a full new assembly, so that gear that always pops out of place, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Because anybody that's ever tried to work on a Sega CD1 has probably spent an insane amount of time just trying to put it back together for that exact reason. Smoke Monster just posted a video that really caught my attention. He demonstrated the no-lag run-ahead mode in RetroArch, but he kind of did it from a perspective that I never looked at it before. So he went in and found out how many frames it takes for certain games to actually accept and translate the command to action on the screen. Now this is not lag. It does drive me a little nuts when I hear people say, like, did you know the Super Nintendo has 2.5 frames of lag? Like, it's not lag, it's just the time it takes for the, you know, the controller input. However, poorly written games would actually take more time. And then I guess maybe you can call that lag, but Smoke Monster actually demonstrated both how to figure out how much frame latency is there for the commands to interpret, and then demonstrated how to do the run-ahead mode to kind of skip that in software. So theoretically reducing the amount of frames it takes and lowering the total lag through software emulation. One thing that he found that I thought was really neat is he actually proved that the Super Nintendo version of Mortal Kombat 2 takes an extra frame or 2 in order to interpret the commands of the controller than the Sega Genesis version. So it was one of those videos that I had a feeling I was going to enjoy, but I was really impressed when I watched the whole thing. So I highly recommend checking it out. And I'm going to be playing a lot with this RetroArch run-ahead thing, and I really want to try to compare. I mean, I don't even want to get into it now. I'm going to be comparing a lot of shit to see how close I could take a software emulation as far as in terms of added lag, and see if I can get it as close to the median of 0, meaning the original console on a CRT, as humanly possible. So thanks to Smoke Monster for posting it, and definitely take a look if you're interested in this stuff. A few years ago, somebody posted some design patents that they'd found that show the N64 having extra add-ons, such as a video security device and more of an add-on device that allows you to have different outputs, and pretty much just expanding the capability of your N64. Well, somebody actually found a prototype of one of those devices that I think looks really cool. So you would obviously sit the N64 right on top of it, and then it's got network. I believe that's network, and it could be phone though, and then your standard multi-out, and then individual outputs, even RF and stuff like that. So there's pictures of the insides, and overall I think it's really neat. Even if it's a non-functioning prototype, it's something that's very cool. This one looks like it has an IDE connector, so maybe this was one of the ones for the security that you could turn into a security device. I don't know who would want to use an N64 for home security or anything, but whatever, I've seen weirder. But if anybody's interested, definitely check out the page, because it's just a neat find. Ben Heck just posted a new video about taking one of those NES clones, the NES on the chips, and seeing how small he could actually make it. And it was pretty neat. Some people hate Ben Heck, some people like him. You know, I can go either way depending on his videos, but I just figured I'd pass it along for anybody who follows and was interested in seeing what it looks like. This next thing is one of the coolest things I've seen in a while. Somebody created a 3D printed design that allows you to take a Game Boy camera and plug it into a DSLR lens. And they ended up taking some really cool pictures with it. There's just something about seeing the little pixelated Game Boy design, but mixed in with a nice lens so that you could actually get good pictures that are now purposely not good. I don't know. I love it. I think these are very fun. Cousin Scott's been talking about doing a similar project, not using a 3D printed design, but a Game Boy camera project for, I don't know, 15 years now or something. So I'm really hoping that we could use stuff like this to get around to that, and hopefully I could help him out too. I still would absolutely love to see one of Furtek's designs where he built a little device around it, so you basically just put the Game Boy camera in and it records to SD. Furtek, if you're listening, dude, if you have any extras, I still really want one of those. I think it would be a blast. And I've seen a bunch of other really cool things with the Game Boy camera over the years. So I don't know. It's you know, we've had chip tunes for a while, and now we're having the video version of that as well. So awesome job for everybody that works on stuff like this, and I hope to see more stuff like it. Voultar just released an open source design for his SCART to BNC breakout board, which is basically just a SCART input with RGBS BNC outputs and RCA left and right audio. So it's a handy little board, and it's completely available for free. I'm hosting the files on my site for now, and we'll soon have an actual page and a more elegant solution for this stuff as well. But anybody that needs it, the link is down below. Well, speaking of open source, it looks like Microsoft confirmed that it's buying GitHub for $7.5 billion. And I don't really know how I feel about that. You know, I'm hoping it'll actually be a good thing in the long run, but I'm really afraid it's going to turn into Skype and Microsoft's going to ruin it like they do everything else, which it's a shitty thing to say. You know, I'm a Windows guy. I like Windows. I always have, but it's just the truth on what happens with some of their acquisitions. And this is really pushing me to double down on getting that new website up and running. And to be honest, I mean, this is the exact problem that I'm looking to solve, in that I want a place that's going to be structured as like an online museum. So if you take the time to do a good design, or if you take the time to do all the research behind what components are supposed to be on the sync line of a SCART cable, I want people to have a repository that they know will be there, and that people care about as much as they do. And it just makes me nervous to see Microsoft buying this, because this could very quickly get spun off into bureaucracy. Whereas having a wiki and a website dedicated to the preservation, but not just the preservation, but the active learning about and building new tools for stuff like the retro gaming community, and really the electronics community in general, I think is a big deal. So for now, I think I'm just gonna get RetroRGB as it is, switched over to an open format, and open that as the public beta of the wiki, and then kind of do it all after the fact. But I really just want to make sure this is set up properly. And I've had so many people email me and say, you know, hey dude, I just found a free web hosting place and put up a wiki. Like, it's not that hard. How come you're taking months to do this? Or, you know, hey, I already uploaded one. You want to just contribute to mine? And no disrespect to all those people, but that's not the point of all of this. The point is preservation and giving people the feeling that all that time and effort into creating these things isn't going to go to a company that's just going to get bought out by Microsoft. It isn't going to go out to just some dude with ads on his site, and that it really is going to a separate, not-for-profit entity that's going to just be there as long as possible, and that hopefully everybody that comes after us could just use that as their, all right, you know, like the Internet Archive, stuff like that, where you could know that it's there and it's solid, and I guess a little bit like Wikipedia. So I guess I'll stop rambling about what, you know, another unreleased product. This one's mine, of course, but seeing this really reminded me that I need to kick this into high gear and get it up as fast as I can. under the constraints that I feel are actually going to make the community grow better. So you guys will see something like that soon, and hopefully if everybody likes it and I get it spun off to its own not-for-profit, different name of the site, then maybe we can get a lot more contributors and really make it something that's community-focused. So, all right, rant over. Let's see if I could actually deliver that promise. Someone just posted a tool for the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection that allows you to extract music, ROMs, artwork, fonts, and a bunch more stuff from it, which is pretty neat. I'd certainly like to check out the ROMs and see if they're original dumps or if there's anything else done to them. And obviously, there's always people that are huge fans of the music and the artwork, but it's available for now on GitHub, but probably not in the future once Microsoft gets a stranglehold on it and prevents stuff like this from being posted. Artemio just posted video of a conference he spoke at where he talked about PC Engine programming, 2D hardware, and optimizations. He's got both of the videos as well as a quick page up on his website for anybody that's interested. And it is all in Spanish, so I think you'll have to rely on closed captions or friends who speak Spanish if you don't yourself. Intellivision has teased plans that they're thinking about making a new game console and that some of the original development team is going to be involved. I've got to be skeptical about this like I am about the Atari VCS and everything else just because it seems like a cash grab onto people that want to buy into nostalgia, but hopefully I'm wrong and hopefully there'll be something awesome about this. But right now it's basically just teases with no actual information, release date, or anything else. And speaking of the Atari VCS, it looks like they've already raised $2.5 million with 24 days left to go. So that blew away their original ask of $100,000. So I guess they're going to try to make this thing for real. I still don't really understand what it is they're going to try to do with a $300 Atari product, but hopefully we'll all be impressed if it actually comes out. But as news comes out and as anything more substantial is released, I'll definitely keep everybody updated. Last week we had the Retro Roundtable podcast, and at about the hour mark we talked about CRT safety, which is something that I think is really important and really just underappreciated. Generally speaking, when you're modding video game consoles, even if you do the worst job on the planet, what are you really going to break? You're going to break your console, maybe you'll break your display or your processor, and maybe the game that goes into it, which obviously sucks, but that's some stuff. When you're modding or working on CRTs, the worst thing that could happen is you die. That is not a scary news tease. This is not something I'm putting in the title for clicks. This is just me talking to anybody that's listening. Please take CRT safety seriously. There was one video that wasn't bad, but the person made a couple of pretty big mistakes in it. And one of them was that they didn't really get across the anode cup, that little rubber cup on the back. The safety measures were not properly taken. Because even when you do discharge it, there's still a possibility of some charge being left. So you never want to just grab that cup. You always want to use something to move that away. There was also some calibration talk without talking about capacitor replacement, which, as we learned with Pat, the BVM tech, and anybody that's done this, you cannot calibrate a CRT if the capacitors are off. And on top of that, if you try to get into the service menu and do a calibration, and the caps are bad, and then you go back and replace the caps, now you have to do it all over again anyway. So you might as well have just waited, replaced the caps first, and probably had a lot less work to do. So, there was some mistakes. And the other one, of course, that cracked me up was the person who said, wet your finger and feel around on a chip to find the signals. Maybe he is the chip whisperer and can do that. Maybe you could find red, green, and blue with his finger. But that is the stupidest thing you could ever teach as a technique. And what fascinated me even more was the fanboys that jumped on and defended him in Twitter and YouTube. Which I'm still blown away about that. Maybe one day I'll get Dr. Anthony Bean to come back on and talk about fanboyism just to try to explain this to me. But please don't ever do that. Even if it's something that only has a 9-volt battery in it that you can't hurt yourself, please don't ever wet your finger and go feeling around on a circuit board. That's got to be the worst practice of anything. So, I don't mean to shit on these specific videos, but at the same time, I I had to speak up and say something because, I mean, please be careful. I cannot say that enough. I don't even care how annoyed people get that I say it. Please don't die working on these things. When we did the overview, we didn't even do a how-to video. When we did an overview of Jose modding that consumer-grade CRT, we probably mentioned 10 times how careful we needed to be and showed how, I don't want to say afraid, but how we absolutely always treated it like it was a live set, even though it was unplugged and discharged. So please keep all that stuff in mind and don't die doing this. If you're still alive, watch the Retro Roundtable, because if you're into the nerdy side of stuff, we definitely get really into it. And the reason I didn't tell anybody about it last week is because it was kind of impromptu. We do have to kind of deal with 5 people's schedules, so sometimes we don't realize we're doing it until the day of. So please subscribe to that and click on the little bell, because we won't ever put anything else on that channel other than these podcasts. So that way, if you want to be in the loop and get notified when they're posted, that way you could know right away. But yeah, please don't die working on CRTs. Marcus has posted installation instructions for his Dejitter mod. I believe he posted some instructions for the SNES 1 chip and the top-loading Famicom, as well as a few others for now. Anybody that's interested in that can just find everything posted on his GitHub page. Another documentary was just posted about the making of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And I'd been following the story since I was a kid, actually. And as time went on, a lot of people made some documentaries about it. Certainly a lot of stories posted. And even though I kind of knew almost everything they talked about, they did a great job with this one, and I really enjoyed watching it. So anybody that's into Sonic the Hedgehog at all, or just likes really well-made videos, might want to check this one out. RetroArch has just announced a partnership with makers of the Bliss Box, which is the device that allows you to use original console controllers through USB. And this is pretty awesome because playing on the original controllers is such a huge part of preserving the actual experience that the original game developers had designed a game around. And to be honest, I haven't used my Bliss Box in a while, and I'm really excited now to get back into it with all of these incredible changes that the RetroArch team has put in, the Runahead mode and all that stuff. So obviously my firmware is probably way out of date, but anybody that's interested in emulation and using the original controllers, grab your Bliss Box if you already bought one. Definitely put the newest firmware up. And it's been supported in RetroArch for a while, but they got a bunch of the kinks worked out, so they felt like now is the time to officially announce the support and the partnership. But overall, I love stuff like this. Maybe someday we can get computer fast enough and the Bliss Box set up right and everything so that we could have a close to the same experience as the original consoles through software emulation and stuff like this. But I'm certainly looking forward to giving it a try. Someone just posted a guide they wrote on how to calibrate a CRT arcade monitor, and while I haven't had time to go through it and really check it out, it seems pretty awesome. The person who made it really went into detail and showed a bunch of different things. So any arcade experts out there, maybe check out this document and post what you think. Is it as good as it looks? Is there any feedback for the creator? But either way, stuff like this is just a great help to everybody in the community, and even if it's not perfect, maybe we could all chip in and help, because we really need more documentation like this. Someone has just found a demo of Pokemon Gold from 1997. They're in the process now of reverse engineering it and doing an English translation. So once again, we're finding a bunch of cool stuff that people might have thought have been lost to the years, and we're bringing back and archiving. So very cool. Capcom has announced the official release date for Mega Man 11. It's going to be released on October 2nd on PlayStation 4, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and Windows PC. And I believe there was a bunch of pre-orders of physical copies on GameStop that sold out in like a second. But for anybody that was waiting for the new Mega Man game, that's the official release date. And it looks really cool. I mean, it looks, at least the look of the game is exactly what I would want a modern 2D side-scroller game to look at. All of the awesome basics of the past, but, with more depth and color and stuff to it. So I'm really looking forward to giving it a try. Last week I mentioned that people had found a newer version of the Virtual Boy game Bound High, and now the person who found it, Captain F, has said, "We're more interested in preserving and sharing this piece of history than profiting from its obscure and potential high value." He discussed it with his associate, and we're prepared to dump and release this ROM. So good, thank you. It is absolutely doing the right thing. Obviously the prototype is still worth something, so if you wanted to make a ton of money, I'm sure you could sell that. But that's not only is it a great thing to do for the community, which is appreciated by every Virtual Boy fan, like all 7 of us. But I mean, at the end of the day, your other choice was to try to make copies and sell Nintendo's intellectual property, which would have been dangerous, and I probably wouldn't have done that if I were you. So thank you for choosing the correct path. And I believe they're sending the dumping hardware to him now. So we'll maybe by next week's podcast, there'll be a ROM available, but hopefully within a few weeks. And anybody with a Flash Boy will be able to play it on original hardware. Everybody else could use emulation, and hopefully there are still plans on a new SD-based flash card for the Virtual Boy, because I would definitely like to have all of the games just on one cart to make it easier to play. But thanks to Captain F for doing the right thing and donating it to the community and the world to be able to play. Someone just posted a video about an adapter they made that allows you to play the game Multi-Purpose Arcade Combat Simulator, or MAX, using either a Sega Light Phaser or a Super Scope. This game was supposedly a military training game that required its own hardware, a specialized light gun, in order to do the training. And now with this adapter, you should be able to use it with just a Light Phaser or a Super Scope. So I'm a huge fan of light gun games. Some are okay, but a bunch are really fun, and fun ways just to kill a short period of time. I still think one of my favorite, retro things to do is to play Missile Defense 3D, where you get to shoot 3D missiles. But anybody that's tried this, please let me know. I'm going to give it a try as soon as I get a chance to, and I definitely love stuff like this, because the more light gun games, the better. A third and final blog entry was just posted regarding reverse engineering the Capcom CPS2 boards in order to bring back suicided boards, or to even prevent suiciding altogether. I talked about this with Smoke Monster a few weeks ago, and this is something that I've always thought was just amazing, that teams of people were really working together to try to pull off stuff like this. So anybody that's interested, it's a great story to tell. All 3 parts are now available, and they go into great detail on the research they did and the things that they had done in order to find this stuff out. So incredible work from a very cool team. Thanks to them for doing that. Last week, a video was posted called Reverse Emulating the NES, where somebody took a Raspberry Pi and turned it into a NES cart in order to offload almost all of the processing onto the Pi itself, and that way you'd be able to actually play a much more powerful game on the NES. They actually showed Super Mario World running, and it's a neat theory. It's based on the same theories that were used for the original games, in that you would add an extra chip onto the cartridge in order to have the NES play games that were more powerful than the hardware it supported. Most famously is Super Mario 3, of course, because there's some pretty cool graphics in that aren't available and if you were to just use the NES's processing. But overall, it was a fun video, and they went into great detail on the work that they did, and I certainly enjoyed it. But the humor was super snarky, so just a fair warning, some people get annoyed with stuff like that. But if you're into that stuff, definitely check it out. Someone posted the design files for a 3D printed wall mount for the Framemeister. So if anybody was looking to wall mount their Framemeister, now you have a pretty good choice to do it, and the files are just available right up on Thingiverse. There's now an open source design for the Vectrex bug fix circuit. I believe this was the same circuit that was already posted on console5.com, but Jacob Proctor did up a board and then posted the design files on GitHub. So anybody that owns a Vectrex and is tired of the buzz, now at least it'd be an easier way to do the buzz fix rather than have to build your own circuit. There's a new SMS game called Galactic Revenge. The trailer had been out for a while, but now the full game is actually available to download, and it's really cool. It's kind of a throwback to Gremlins 2, and it looks like a great game. I'm really looking forward to trying it out. I just want to wait until I get my RGB monitors back in so that I could actually sit down and play it on a real SMS on a monitor, kind of the way I always liked it. But pretty cool that people are still making SMS games, and thanks a lot to the team behind it that were able to pull it off. The game Planet X3 that was released for the Commodore 64 last year is now getting remade for MS-DOS, including CGA versions, and it will even work on older computers like the Tandy 1000 that I used to own. The Kickstarter is live, but it's already been funded, so that's pretty good news. And it's a game that already exists, so hopefully porting it over to these other platforms won't be too much of a challenge. But I think it's really cool. I'd love to fly down to Justin's house, who has my old Tandy 1000, and give it a shot. But it's very cool that stuff like this is still happening, and I'm wondering if it'll even be playable on disc, because my old Tandy 1000 had two 5¼ inch floppies and no hard drive. So I'm wondering if this one you would actually have to load it to a hard drive. But either way, it's cool stuff, and shout out to Wendell for passing this one on to me. Firebrand X is working on a pretty neat audio project for the Genesis. He's working on a design that takes the YM2612 audio chip and essentially replaces it with the YM3438. Now, you can't just do a drop-in replacement because there's certain timing issues with the 2612 that actually rely on that chip. So he's working on a board that will have both plugged in at the same time, and I think he's even going to try to make it so you could switch back and forth between them. But he has audio files posted for anybody that wants to hear the differences between a game running through the 2612 and the 3438. And I think it's very cool. He's also making it a non-invasive mod, so while you do have to remove the chip, you don't have to cut anything. So, if you're a preservationist, you could put it back the way it was. So overall, if you're an audio fan and you like doing weird projects like this for the Genesis, this is definitely something that should go to the top of your list. Extrems posted another version of the Game Boy interface software with a few more additions and tweaks, so definitely check out the changelog and see if this affects anything that you've been working on, and if you've been having any trouble, definitely check out the new version. The TV brand TCL will soon be available in Europe. You could pre-order now for June 25th delivery, and these are the cheap TVs that have low latency that gamers have really been liking the past few years. The ones that I've tested have been compatible with all modes of the OSSC, including with Super Nintendo, and when tuned right, have less than 1 frame of lag. One thing to note though, all features are not available using the remote control. You actually have to download the Roku app and connect to it to get to some of the expert picture settings. And the setting noise reduction made a much bigger difference than turning on game mode. In my tests, game mode really barely even lowered the latency, and noise reduction was the one that actually kicked it under 1 frame of lag. So that's on a 65-inch 2017 version. Hopefully I'll soon get to try some of the 2018 versions, but that's just a tip I need to make sure to impress upon everybody. If you're going to buy one of these TVs, download the app onto your phone, connect to it, and go into expert picture settings and turn off noise reduction. Maybe it's different on the 2018s, but definitely for the 2017s. But at least now there's more choices for TVs in Europe as well. And thanks to Eric for the tip. A Sonic the Hedgehog movie was just announced that's starring James Marsden, and it will be a mixture of CGI and live action. The movie is supposed to be released November 15th, 2019. And oh boy, I hope they make it a kids movie, because I can't imagine them trying to make it for teens or older and being able to pull that off, but I guess we'll see in about a year and a half. There's been a few updates to the GameCube software Swiss in the past few months, and for whatever reason I keep forgetting to put them in the Roundup, so big apologies to EmuKidded. Definitely didn't mean anything by that, it kept slipping my mind. But anybody that's been using Swiss and relying on it as much as I do for GameCube use, definitely keep an eye on the GitHub page and download the latest version from 11 days ago. There's always a bunch of very cool updates, and some things are little tweaks, some things are bigger, but it's always good to stay up to date with stuff like this, because who knows some of the cool things they found out from the version you're running till now. I think the version I was running was actually over a year old, so there's definitely a lot of changes from then till now. I had received a lot of emails in the past week about a Dreamcast HDMI cable that's available on Amazon for pretty cheap. I wanted to remind everybody to keep your expectations in check about stuff like this. To try and oversimplify, the way the Dreamcast outputs its video signal won't look proper on most flat-screen TVs. In order to get that signal to look right, you need to manipulate it using something like an open source scan converter, something that has the ability to take its aspect ratio and resolution and reformat it in a way that your modern TVs would look correctly with the correct size to it. So when I see products like this for incredibly cheap, I'm just assuming that they're using a basic analog to digital converter. And depending on the one they use, I mean, for a $29 product, they're probably using bottom of the barrel stuff. It's probably not going to come out that great. So just keep your expectations in check. And that doesn't mean that you might not want this, though. To be honest, if you have a full gaming setup and Dreamcast is your favorite console, so you have the open source scan converter, you have a really high quality VGA solution, and everything's tuned perfectly, but maybe you have a second TV, maybe you just want to play in the bedroom sometimes or something. Something like this is probably fine. The aspect ratio is going to be off. Unless they use the worst chip on the planet, there probably isn't going to be any lag because it's probably just taking analog and converting it direct to digital. So for situations like that, or if you can't afford a good solution now and you just want this, which you could always use as a backup in the future, stuff like that's fine. But just be wary of what I'm sure is about to come. Anytime there's a product like this, all of the famous YouTubers do a big video about how great it is and then tell you to click on the link below to their Amazon Associates account to buy one for yourself. Just please don't fall for that crap. Be smart. If you need this as a backup to hold you off until you get a better solution, whatever, there's definitely a place for products like this. And if the Dreamcast was my favorite console, I might even own one just for those reasons. But if you're looking for quality, almost always stay away from cheap stuff like this. Before I go, I have a question for you Datapath users. I use the Datapath Vision E1S capture card, and I use it for the same reason that most of us probably do. You could find them cheap on eBay, and they accept everything you throw at it. All of the console resolutions, all of the OSSC resolutions, but I still have a hell of a time getting it to work with OBS. And it's really baffling because it works in other software no problem, and OBS is supposedly the open broadcaster software. So just because there are so many of these out there, I would have assumed that somebody would have come up with a solution for this. I talked to somebody last year who walked me through getting it working, but it involved some tweaking, and then, you know, it's a new computer, new build of Windows, a different card. I'm really just wondering if anybody else has a different solution out there other than to use other software other than OBS. So if anybody has these things reliably working in OBS, please let me know. Or maybe, you know, maybe I'll even just put up a quick page on the website. Even the current website, I won't even wait for the new one, just to have this information out there for people. Because for such a cheap and useful card, I really wish it could be working with the open software that so many of us are using. Well, that was quite a bit of stuff this week. I hope that made for a decent 100th episode. Like I said before, I hope I keep doing this for a long time, and I really just need to thank all of you for all the support. There's been so many awesome people out there between the Patreon supporting the channel and all of my friends, both old friends and new friends that I've made through the channel that have been helping me out, and I really appreciate all of you guys. So thank you so much for everything. I really hope to keep this going for quite a long time, and I'll see you next week.